in the studio, Bryce McMurray, fitness performance coach. How are you, Bryce?
Good to see you.
Influencers, because they've got a big following on Instagram. Where is their qualification to give me advice?
My advice to people would be to look at their profiles, look at their bios, see if they've worked with people. Most of them aren't certified, they're not qualified to be giving out that advice. They haven't got the background, they haven't done the study. They're merely being paid behind the scenes to push their product. Different companies are going to target them as a way of extending their reach. And so I think from my point of view, I think the duty of care here, just to some of the information that's come across, especially in relation to diet and nutrition, is, dodgy at best. I think anything we can do to raise people's awareness about the information that's coming across, because sometimes there's a huge disconnect between the image that's posted versus the text that's written underneath. It doesn't fit the profile.
Yeah.
And so some of the information that's given out is quite worrying because, like I said, the word influencer comes from the term that they have the ability to influence others.
Yeah.
So when people pay them to influence these products, they're changing the minds and perceptions of young people nowadays.
The guide to losing the first stone.
There's kind of different steps, and I like to think about, giving people a framework. That initial stage when they want and make the decision to kind of lose that stone, we got to take almost the decision-making process off them and make it as easy as possible. Because if you give them 50 layers of information, they're going to struggle to actually decipher. So it's putting a nutrition framework in place where can we remove the processed foods in the diet, so taking those out, the junk food, that needs to come aside. Because really, key thing with all of that is that they don't have the digestive enzymes present. So you're just making it harder on the gut. And the easiest thing to think about is if the foods that you have in your house and in your fridge, for example, are going to rot, that shows you that the enzymes are present and they're going to naturally break down themselves. Whereas, if you've got biscuits that can sit in the cupboard for 12 months and still stay the exact same shape.
Like it, yeah.
Those type of foods, the processed foods, have the enzymes sucked out to improve the shelf life. And so when you then eat and consume them, you're making it harder for the body to break down.
Oh, that's a good point. I like
So
it.
single ingredient foods is what we push for first and foremost.
If it rots,
it's got the digestive present. Yeah, exactly. If you've got a sell-by date on it, so good quality protein source. And then we talk about balance on the plate. So when they look at the plates, remove the processed foods. Do they have a palm-sized, good quality, lean protein source, whether that's meat or fish? If they want to go down the plant-based route, they can look at tofu. Do we have some good quality green veg? Say like a thumb-sized portion of nuts. And again, with a lot of my clients, I kind of push and persuade them to look at nuts, nut butter.
Nut butter's all right, by the way.
Good quality nut butter.
Okay,
so the likes of Whole Earth and Meridian, because they've removed the sugar and it's just naturally crushed the nuts.
Because I throw that into a bit of fruit at night.
Yeah.
And it just gives it that sweetness, and so that's all right, is
There's
it?
a little bit of protein in there, a little bit of healthy fats. It's all right, but you're not going for the supermarket branded value line, which is just pumped full of sugar. And that's why the kids love it, because it tastes so sweet.
It is, yeah.
The natural peanut butter compared to the sugary one should taste remarkably different.
Right.
That plus the likes of olive oil is going to have you good healthy fats. And then we're talking about non-negotiables. So what non-negotiables can we put in place to help them throughout this transformation and losing the first stone? Once they've overhauled the diet and they start to increase their exercise and their steps. But I did a class up in London recently, and there's 50 of us in the class.
Wow.
It was high intensity. There was treadmills and there was different floor stations. We were working flat out. Heart rate is up at zone 4 or 5 the whole time. But there's a friend of mine who I know he's got back problems, so we had to be careful with him. But unfortunately, because the instructor's got 50 people in the class,
it's a lot,
she can't give him that individual attention to make sure his form's spot on, his core is nice and stable, his technique is sound. And so there's a danger that by going to these classes and buying into that environment and real motivation, you can still injure yourself. But my question for that would be, what is the level of instruction?
Yeah.
And is there a coach's eye present over each of the individuals in the class to make sure they're not in danger of injuring themselves? So unless the quality of coaching is very high, and again, it's gradual progression, overloading the body, not going too quickly, and there's a danger they can break down. And that's where the one-to-one coaching and the personal trainer for me will always trump everything else. Because you've got individualized attention, they're checking your form, they're pushing you beyond what you think is actually capable. But most importantly, you're doing it in a correct manner that you don't injure yourself. I think there's a big problem in the industry, and there's a big gap right now where people aren't managed properly when they get to the end goal. So the worst case scenario for me is when someone approaches me and says, okay, I've got 8 weeks, I'm heading up to a stag do or a lad's holiday. It's typical.
Right, yeah, we're
going to diet down, stricter calories, go crazy with exercise, and then suddenly, when they've reduced their body fat and they're in that receptive state and the body's in a good position to take on board nutrients, they jump into a week's holiday or a weekend, smashing down pizzas, takeaways, beers, and all sorts, and they pile the weight back on.
Yeah.
So then from a psychological point of view, it's quite damaging because there's that guilt, shame, regret that comes afterwards.
So how do you maintain it?
So for me, the key thing here is the reverse. So we talk about the reverse diet. So when you get someone down to an end point where they've dropped their calories and it's been carefully managed by a coach and they've, say, increased their output, whether that's their steps and their cardio and their effort in the gym, they get to their end goal and they're happy.
Yeah.
You know, your body's metabolism will have changed, your resting metabolic rate will have changed because you're now lighter, so you don't need as many calories. But at the same time, the calories you've got yourself down to get to that stage is unsustainable for the rest of your life.
Yes,
so we
it is.
slowly need to reverse you back out, and that's what takes care and precision. You can't just go up to maintenance calories. So let's say you dieted down to like 1600, but previously you were on 2500.
Yeah.
You can't just jump up to 2500 because you will accumulate very quickly. So it's a gradual step-by-step approach. With a lot of my online clients, we may accumulate, extra 150 calories a week, and you're slowly bringing it back up so you don't spill over.
But will your body stay the same as where you got it down to?
Not technically where you get it down to, but you may have a kilogram, 2 kilograms either side. But
Yeah,
for
not-
someone
not
who's gone
bad.
through a dramatic transformation, they can handle that. Because really getting them down to shoot ready in preparation for a photo shoot is one thing. They're really not going to stick there for the rest of their life. So if you can tell them you've got a 2 kilogram buffer that they can stay within, and you're building their metabolism and their calories back up, that once they know that these are the calorie number they can handle long term, they're in a much better position. Because most people get to that end stage and they go ballistic, and then they go straight in with, like, say, 3,500, 4,000 calories because party, pizzas, donuts, takeaways.
Yeah.
And this has all been born and bred in the industry from people who compete. So all they talk about is getting on stage, competing, and then I can't wait for the donuts, the burgers, the pizza
Yeah,
afterwards.
that's right, yeah.
You're talking 5,000, 6,000 calories easily. And that cycle continues, and over the space of 2 weeks, they put 10 kilograms on.